Okay, so good day. So this time, we will discuss about forces na problem solving. So let's have example number 1. So a 3 kilogram mass undergoes an acceleration by acceleration of 2i plus 5j meters per second squared. So find the resultant force. So take note that Newton's first law is force is equal to mass times acceleration. Ano? And this is the value of your acceleration. So since this is ang tawag doon, ang gagawin nyo lang, just multiply mass and acceleration in vector. So the final answer is 3 times 2, it becomes 6. Tapos 3 times 5, it becomes 15j. So the answer is 6i plus 15j. Now, ang tinatanong kasi is the magnitude of the force. So to get the magnitude of the force, syempre, kunin natin yung 6i plus 15j na to and transform it using Pythagorean theorem. So the answer is 16 newtons. Okay? So, let's have example number 2. Naman, example number 2. While two forces act on it, a particle of mass 32 kilograms is to move continuously with the velocity of 3 meters per second I minus 4 meters per second j. One of the forces is 2 newtons I minus 6 newton j. So what is the other force? So this is an example of action-reaction. No? Okay? So since the acceleration is 0, we have F2 is equal to negative F1. And ano ba yung F1 natin? Ang F1 natin is 2 newtons. 2 newtons I tapos minus 6 newtons J. So, para mag-equate yan, ang gagawin nyo lang, i-negate nyo lang to, no? So, it's equal to, sabi niya, negative 2Ni, okay? Ni minus quantity, minus 6 newtons J. So, F2 is just the negative of it, okay? So, yun yung answer. So, you will get negative 2Ni plus 6 newtons J. Okay? So, yan yun. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, next. A 4 kilogram object has a velocity of, ano yung given natin? 3 meters per second at 1 instant. 8 seconds later, its velocity became 8i plus 10j meters per second. Assuming the object was subject to a constant net force, find the components of the force and its magnitude. Okay? So, take note, magkaiba ang x sa y. Okay? Magkaiba ang x sa y. So, acceleration is velocity with respect to time. So, the velocity is 8 meters per second. Nung una at 1 instant. So, pagsamahin mo lahat ng x component. So, ito. Ano yung x component dito? Ito yun, di ba? This is the x component of the first velocity. And this is the x component of the second velocity. Ano? So, this is Vf minus Vi over the time, which is 8 seconds. So, you will arrive at acceleration with respect to the x-axis, which is 0.63 meters per second. Now, for the y component naman of acceleration, ito siya. Diba? Yung 10, this is the 10. Okay? Ito yon. Okay? Tapos, dito sa unang velocity kasi, wala siyang j component. So, that's the reason why this is 0. So, minus 8 seconds. So, you will get 1.3 meters per second squared. Ngayon, get the component. The force with respect to the x component and the force with respect to the y component. Naalala niyo, ito yung answer sa acceleration with respect to x. Ito naman yung answer sa acceleration with respect to y. So, you using your calculator, you will arrive at this answer. And again, get the magnitude of these forces. So you will get 2.5 Newton square plus 5 Newton square, and you will get 5.6 Newtons. Ngayon, hindi naman tinatanong ang direction. Pero, in this case, pinakita pa rin. Ano? So, the direction is 63.4 degrees. Okay? So, let's have another question. If a man weighs 875 Newtons on Earth, what would he weigh on Jupiter, where the acceleration due to gravity of Jupiter is 25.9 meters per second squared. So, take note that weight is equal to mass times gravity. Ano? So, given ang weight niya sa Earth. So, ngayon, kung given ang weight niya sa Earth, we have to derive first the mass. Okay? So, mass is equal to weight over gravity. So, ito yung mass niya. Pag meron ka ng mass, you can get the weight of the object or of the person in Jupiter. So, in Jupiter, the weight of that person becomes 2.31 times 10 to the 3 newtons. Mas greater ang weight niya sa Jupiter. Pero, take note of this one. The mass did not change. So, regardless of kung nasaan ka, the mass is constant. The weight is the one that is changing. Okay? Next example. A 210 kilogram motorcycle accelerates from 0 to 55 miles per hour in 60 seconds. What is the magnitude of the motorcycle's acceleration? Okay, second, what is the magnitude of the net force causing the acceleration? Take note, 55 miles per hour, pag meron kayong ganyan sa physics, hindi pwedeng diretsyon yung i-solve. Make sure that you have to convert it. And 1 mile is equal to 1,609 meters. What else? 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds. So if you have that, you will arrive at 24.6 meters per second. Now, you get the acceleration. Acceleration is the final minus the initial. So the final is 24.6 meters per second. Initial is 0. You will arrive at 4.1 meters per second squared. Okay? Next. Letter B. What is the force? Okay, so the force is 210. Ito yung mass niya times the acceleration, and you will arrive at 8.6 times 10 to the 2 newtons. Okay, so that is the magnitude of the net force. Okay, ito. Calculate T1, T2, and T3. Now, we have here a free body diagram. Actually, tatlo. Okay, so pag sinabing free body diagram, you get the free body diagram of T3. So, ito yung free body diagram ng T3 natin. Okay? And iba yung sa T2, iba yung sa T1. So, for T3, pinakita siya. There is a weight which is downward. This is equivalent to your weight. And with this, magkakaiba ang free body diagram ng tension 1 sa tension 2. So, since this is a balanced force, the sum of all the forces that act on it is equal to 0. Ganun siya. So, ayan yan. So, for T3, ano mangyari? Sa T3 muna tayo. So, T3 tayo. Tignan natin. So, sabi ko, lahat ng pataas ay positive at lahat ng pababa ay negative. So, we have T3 minus W is equal to 0. Okay? So, yun yun. And what else? So, since T3, equate natin yan is equal to W, hence, the tension number 3 is equal to the weight. Okay? Paano kinuha yung weight yan? So, weight is equal to mass times gravity. At yung mass natin is 5 kilogram, I should say. So, 5 kilogram times the gravity here on Earth, which is 9.8 meters per second. So, the weight is equal to 9.8 times 5. We get 49 newtons. Let's proceed. So, sabi ko kanina, may free body diagram ang T3. Ano? How about T2? So, T2, since ito ay naka-attach siya let's say, sa isang ceiling, ganyan. So, hinihila niya pataas. So, that is the direction of the tension. For T1 also, hinihila niya rin pataas. So, ito yung direction niya. So, 50 degrees dito, tapos 40 degrees dito. Bakit siya 50 degrees? Okay? Bakit siya 50 degrees? Diba? Diba sa math natin, sa algebra, ay sa geometry, diba? The angle here is equal to the angle here. Diba? Complement ba ang tawag doon? Tapos, or the angle here is equal to the angle here. We forgot that identity, pero yun siya. No? So, yun. Okay. So, next. So, we got an answer of 49 newtons kanina. Ngayon, ano yung importante dito? Very crucial one. Separate the x component from the y component. So, first, you have to get the sum of all the forces with respect to the x-axis muna. X-axis muna yung tignan nyo. No? It's the sum of all the forces with respect to the x-axis. And, di ba, pagkukunin natin ang x component, okay, so multiply it with cosine. So, the sum of all the forces with respect to the x-axis muna tayo. So, ano yan? Tignan natin to. So, for T1, ito siya, T1, 40 degrees. So, meron tayong T1 cosine 40 degrees. Pero, bakit negative to? Kasi you look at the direction of T1. To the left siya. To the left. Okay? Next. Dito naman, T2, cosine 50 degrees. Bakit siya positive? Kasi if you look at this direction, to the right siya. And it's equal to 0. Walang horizontal component ang T3. Ano? So, horizontal mo lang kunin natin. So, sum of all the x components. So, yan. Ngayon ang gagawin natin, take note, we have two unknown in one equation. So, ang gagawin natin, equate muna natin ito, and T2 is equal to cosine 40 over cosine 50 T2. So, you will get 1.19 T1. So, hindi pa to yung final answer. Leave it as it is muna. Okay? Next. Ngayon, we will have to get naman the vertical sum of the forces along the y-axis. So, you will have the sum of all the forces with respect to the y-axis is equal to 0. And repeat, vertical component na tayo. Ano? Huwag nyo nang pakialaman yung x. Vertical na tayo. So, ano to? So, tignan natin yung directions natin. Kanina, this is the free body diagram. Ano? We have a tension, T3 pababa. Tapos, we have T2 pataas. Tapos, we have T1 also na pataas. So, yun yung lagi natin tandaan is the direction. So, again, for y component, naalala nyo, we have to multiply it with sine. This time, it's sine theta. No? Sine theta. So, T1, ito siya. So, ano yung angle na meron siya? It's 40 degrees. And pataas siya. That's the reason why it is positive. No? T2, again, so ito yung angle ni T2. And pataas ulit siya. That's the reason why it is positive. Now, for T3, pababa siya. So, it's negative and it's equal to 0. Now, we have again three unknowns in one equation. So, anong gagawin natin? Kanina, nakuha natin na T2 is equal to 1.19 T1. Diba? And T3 is equal to 49 newtons. Now, we will equate this one or we will substitute this one here. Okay? So, substitute na natin siya. So, pag sinubstitute natin, this becomes like this. Yan. And yan. And we are left with one unknown in one equation. So, for that, makukuha na natin yung T1. And for it, you will get something like 31.5 newtons. Ngayon, hindi pa natin alam si T2. Ano? So, since T2 is equal to 1.19 T1, so the answer is 37.5 newtons. So, you will get these answers for tension. Proceed to the next example. This example is similar to yung previous kanina, no? So, yan yung diagram. Okay? So, syempre, pag tinignan niyo itong diagram natin, again, we have the free body diagram of kaganyan. This is your T1. Okay? This is your T2. And it is to the right. Okay? T2. Tapos, this is your T3, which is downward. Okay? Nagkataon na ang given dito is the mass. So that, for free body diagram, T3, diba? For T3 muna tayo, the sum of all the forces is equal to 0. For T3. T3 tayo. Ano? So, T3, positive siya. T3 is, tawag doon, positive siya. Okay? T3, I should say. So, pag free body diagram tayo ng T3, ito yung mass, di ba? So, there is a weight downward, and T3 is upward. So, if you look at this one, T3 is positive. So, pataas siya. Weight is negative, and it's equal to 0. Okay? That's the reason why T3 is equal to M2G, and you have this answer. Okay, let's look at the horizontal forces. Ano for sum of all the x component? Okay, let's look at this one. Sum of all the x component of the forces is equal to 0. So, tingnan natin. Tingnan niyo yung horizontal. So, itong T2 to the right siya. Itong T1, upward siya. Upward siya. So, yun yung free body diagram niya. So, itong T3, wala siyang horizontal force. Wala siyang component ng horizontal. So, T2 is to the right. Okay? Tapos, T1, although pa-upward siya, pero ano yung direction niya? Okay? Ano tong direction na to? Is it to the left or to the right? Okay? So, if you look at this one, T1 is pointing to the left. Okay? So, this becomes T1. And since we're getting the horizontal component, we have to multiply it with cosine theta. So, wala na, and it's equal to 0. So, yan yun. So, that's the reason why ito siya. Okay? Now, how about the sum of the vertical components? How about the vertical component? Tingnan natin. Okay? So, for vertical component, add ulit tayo. So, the sum of all the forces with respect to the vertical component is equal to 0. So, pag tinignan natin itong free body diagram dito sa gitna, so we have T3 which is downward, T2 which is to the right, tapos T1 is upward. So, this is T1. Vertical ang hinahanap natin. So, since vertical component tayo, wala na. We will not consider already T2. Kasi T2 lies directly on the x-axis. So, wala. Hindi na consider si T2. So, we will only consider T1 and T3. Okay? So, since si T1, pataas siya, so positive yan. And since vertical ang component natin, we will use sine theta. Sine 60 degrees. Minus T3, pababa siya, and is equal to 0. Okay? So, yan yun. So, that's the reason why ito yung value na yan. Okay? And, manipulating the equation, okay, so, T1, okay, T1 becomes T3 over sine 60. Manipulate this equation, okay? So, T1 becomes T3 over sine 60 degrees. Manipulate this equation. Ayan. And T3, alam natin, we already solved for this one. 98 newtons over sine 60 degrees, you get 113. Now, going back to the first equation, ito, okay, T2 is equal to T1 cosine 60 degrees. Okay? So, multiply natin, nakuha natin si T1. So, ito yon. times cosine. So you will get Q2, which is 56.6 newtons. So that's how these tensions were